you afraid of God? No, but I'm afraid of you. What a weird thing to say right now. What a mean thing to say. Sorry, it was a weird question to get. Oh, welcome to Columbia. This is your host, the BioCuck King. This is
BioCuck works.
Oh my god! Wow, and don't take this intro again.
What a wonderful start to a bonus episode of the BioShock Games Club. I'm your host, Nick Costanza, bringing you a special episode as we conclude our BioShock 1 Games Club. We wanted to give you a little special to talk about one of my favorite games. I am going to keep that question mark there. We'll talk about BioShock Infinite. This is a game that I have a lot of history with, a game that I was very excited for before it came out, that I greedily devoured when it did release, and that I have thought about a lot, but not replayed in nearly 10 years. So I am very excited to talk about this, and I have a wonderful round table. First up, a former Bonk Boy and front man of the band The Regressions, one of my oldest friends, Dan Frost. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nick. That was an excellent intro, considering you didn't ask, so that was perfect.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, I took a shot in the dark at it. Dan, so I'll call you D-Fru. Is that true?
Mostly you, most of all, but you're not the only person in the world. My mom does not.
Your mom does not. Okay. Well, I guess I got one up on her. What have you been doing the past few months since the Bonk Boys retired?
I wish this isn't how I learned the Bonk Boys were retired. This is kind of crushing, but beyond that, hanging out. I did replay this game before we recorded, and I thought it was funny that it was like, do you want to overwrite your autosave from like 1:30 a.m. January 18th, 2018? I was like, yeah, you can probably. I don't remember what I was doing.
You know, I know I haven't been introduced yet, but I've kind of got a bit of a theory, and my running theory is that this bonus episode is also actually the Bonk Boys. If you catch my drift. That we'll figure. I think I'll let that the listener totally gets what I'm getting at, but we'll let that come through later.
That's the sonorous voice of one Connor McCabe. Welcome back to the Games Club.
Nick, thanks for having me, folks. I'm really pleased to let you all know that I've seen through a tear in the universe, and in that universe, I'm filthy stinking rich. So things are looking up.
Oh, wow. I wish I got that one. I'm usually tied to a chair and beaten.
I'm so sorry. Well, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about this game. I played it. I've been aware of it since it came out. I'm sure we'll talk about histories, but I just played it for the first time. So pumped to talk to you about this on this bonus episode that's going out to a lot of places.
Quick question. Did you stream this game?
I streamed everything in this game with the exception of like a couple sections, including the end. Yeah. I finished the end this weekend in like a window that I had to play video games, a very small window, and I didn't end up streaming the finale.
That's okay. And who wants to see the ending? Speaking of, we have one final guest to introduce. Jeremy Schmidt, Super NPC Radio himself. Welcome back.
Caw!
Is that the God signal?
I'm the bird.
Oh.
I'm the big bird. Yeah.
Member of the Order of Ravens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to be one of them.
I don't know what that is, but I'm the bird from the game.
Okay, gotcha. Oh, Songbird.
Songbird.
Yes, I see. Because there's a some different bird representation throughout this game. There's hummingbirds, there's the crow power, there's also the Order of the Ravens, which I think is a little bit confusing to have both ravens and crows. They look very similar. I know one's bigger, but
what is the Order of Ravens? I just played this and I don't know what that is.
It's one of the first places you go to. They're basically like the KKK.
Oh, is that where you see all like the phrenology stuff happening in the basement and
all that? Freaking Inglorious Bastards, that place.
No, I actually think, despite how clumsy this game is with its bird content and how it fails in a lot of what it's trying to do with the bird stuff, I still overall think for a game in 2013 to even acknowledge birds, huge.
Yeah. Improviser Connor McCabe has joined
Guys, I'm good for like 3 good jokes at the top of every podcast, and then I'm basically a 0. And I do consider those good jokes, even if half of us only didn't understand them.
You know what, Connor? I appreciate that. If we're like self-analyzing, I'm good for about 50% of a podcast. Like the first half of it, I'm really on, and then I turn off. But I never successfully land an intro. So it's good to be aware of our strengths and our weaknesses.
That's interesting. I always sort of thought of you as a second half sort of guy. Sorry, I couldn't even get that one out without laughing. Nick, you're a star, baby.
Yeah. Oh, is he in the comedy box? Is he out? Schrodinger's game. I don't know.
Pretty much.
This game is a lot of stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm,
we'll talk about it. Jeremy
he talks about it a lot.
Okay. First off, I want to clarify a rumor that's been spreading. This is not an episode of the Bonk Boys. To say that we went on hiatus and all of a sudden came back here at the end of the Games Club would be doing a disservice to the Games Club, of which this is purely a bonus episode for. Okay?
Yeah. And I would like to add really quick on behalf of the Patreon and the network, thanks so much for listening to the BioShock Games Club. It was an honor to do that. It was like one of the most fun games clubs that we've done. I'm so happy to be able to do this bonus episode. This is great that we're able to talk about this game too, because I want to talk about both. When I start talking about one, I want to talk about both of them. And then if you might be watching this not live, but on YouTube later. So yeah, if you're watching us, hello.
Hi.
Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, consider heading over to the Patreon, patreon.com/SuperNPCRadio.
Don't send that comment. I see you. Don't send it. Don't send that comment. YouTuber.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
And Dan, I guess for you, welcome to the Games Club. I don't believe you haven't been on a Games Club episode in the past, right? Just Bonk Boys.
Yeah, I'm jumping in for the last one, which is what most people recommend for like series and shows and stuff.
Perfect. Well, the interesting thing about this is, like, I'm sure we're going to get into it, and sorry for stepping on toes here, but this is this is kind of in the format of our old series, like when we were doing The Legend of Zelda or Metal Gear Solid or Donkey Kong, where we would cover one game in an episode, like an overview. Now we go through, like BioShock. We did 11 episodes on one game, so it is kind of, I know you were like, this is a weird time to jump in. I actually think it's the perfect time, and I'm glad you're here.
Well, thanks, Connor.
You betcha.
I will stick around then.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you. You're texting me. Can I leave? Oh, never mind. Oh, okay.
I don't know why I said all those, but
So I want to talk about BioShock Infinite today, and I wanted to talk about it before we decided to do this episode. I have a connection to this game, as I mentioned. I started college in 2013. I followed on Dan's heels to Western Washington University, Bellingham, Washington. And I lived on the complete other side of campus from him when I first got there. This might be some Bonk Boys lore, but I'm explaining for the Games Club listeners. Dan, I know you had a bit of a lonely stretch in college that we talked about on another episode that you filled with Game of Thrones. Well, I filled my lonely stretch on the other side of campus with video games. and even video game trailers. I probably watched the trailers for this game and Grand Theft Auto 5, which were the upcoming releases that year, like 100 times each. I was really obsessive. Another thing that Dan and I would do before I had other friends at college was he would come over and we'd watch Breaking Bad, and we would watch a couple episodes and we would dissect it after, and we would talk about what happened and the themes. And it was where I became a very conscious consumer of media, was at that stage of my life. So I had that mindset going into this game. BioShock is obviously a game with a lot of political themes and a lot of chatter about social implications and such. And this game has that as well. I When I first finished this game, I took a walk around the college campus after, like the entire campus. I was just like, I gotta get outside. I gotta think about that. As much as I remember that ending affecting me, the twist of the game, I did not remember that it's exposed in essentially the last two lines of dialogue in this game. So I just want to give all this as a preface for how I feel about the game, but I also want to let the listeners know right now we're spoiling BioShock Infinite. We're spoiling BioShock. We're not spoiling BioShock 2 because I still have not played it. Can anybody let us know what were your thoughts on BioShock Infinite when it came out, if you played it? Jeremy, did you play it right when it came out?
Yeah, much like you, I was, watching every new trailer that would drop for the game, and not. I was actually graduating college this year as opposed to starting, so I'm 100. But this was a big deal for anyone who remembers. It was a huge wind up to it. It was years of talking about this game before the trailer started to drop, before it dropped. And everyone wanted it. It was going to be so huge. There's going to be so many possibilities. You were going to be able to go see that Star Wars was on the marquee in an alternate reality. They made a big deal about that. And then when the game came out and I played it.
Did it have a lasting impact on you? It sounds like the answer is no. Oh, it did.
The answer is it had a huge lasting impact on me. I just, we got so much to discuss on it. There's good, bad, zigs and zags. There's all kinds of stuff. It definitely was not what it was touting that it was going to be.
No, it wasn't.
It is something good and different than what it said it was going to be. Still,
we will get into all of that. Defru, how about you? When did you first play this?
Definitely. So after we lived separately, we lived together the next year. And that's when I remember playing BioShock in that dorm room, I'm sure at your insistence. And then it must have been that year because I think it was still 2013 in my Steam when I bought it. So it would have been the end of the year.
How did Nick ask you to play BioShock? And in any particular way?
I feel like this is an off-pod conversation. I'm sure he was just like, hey, you should play this video game. And I was like, yeah, I like video games.
If I liked a piece of art of which I consider this game, I have been known to get obsessive, and I present it to people to get their takes on it. I'll also say, though, in our college dorm that we shared, we were kind of a cool room because we always kept our door open. We had a nice mounted TV. Usually had, we got HBO Go on there. It was that era. But we also had two Xbox 360s because I ended up in possession of two, and I had one at my desk and one that was communal for the rest of the room.
It's awesome.
Mostly so we could play Call of Duty online together.
/Atlas convinced Defru to play this, did you?
I did not.
Will? Okay.
And I did not Comstock Booker him either.
Okay.
And I have to tell you guys, this playthrough, I made a huge connection in my mind. I talked about on the Games Club how it's always kind of bothered me that Atlas and Fontaine have different voice actors. I officially have the exact same critique for BioShock Infinite.
Mm.
I have always been bothered by Comstock's voice. It never fit him to begin with to me, but it really doesn't fit when you learn the twist of the game.
Okay.
So Connor, I guess we'll lead with you on first impression thoughts because I understand you're the newest.
Yeah, and I like I kind of hinted at earlier, I remember this time in gaming when this summer, 2013, coincidentally, Jeremy, I also had finished college in May of 2013. And Tifru, did you start the same year as Nick?
I started fall 2012, so I was there like a quarter before Nick
Okay.
came
I was just kind of
along.
curious if we were about to have a little 2-and-2
Yeah,
situation here.
yeah.
That would have been more fun.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
you know
no,
what?
he's
You can't change history, or can you?
Could have lied.
So I remember this time because there was so much excitement uh, about not just this game and GTA 5 and The Last of Us, but the new console generation that was on its way between the PS4 and the Xbox One. I remember when those finally came out that fall, I remember there was this Taco Bell promotion where you could like win one. So I was going to Taco Bell, probably double the amount, which is already a lot for me. Just trying to win, getting this special box, it was like a Taco Bell box you could get that had a deal. So I remember, both, especially for this game and The Last of Us, the like images. I remember, not that they're the same game at all, but it is, it is interesting um, that Troy Baker is voicing one of the protagonists of each of these games, that they're similar in the sense that they're both kind of and kind of not escort games the entire time. The similarities are striking, obviously, but I remember being interested in this and The Last of Us, but didn't come to play this game until now, to finish off our BioShock Games Club. I've heard so much about it over the years, both also the good, some of the good, some of the bad. But entering this game, I think the great joy for me is that I knew almost nothing about it, with the exception of what the setting was like, and that there was this character of Elizabeth that you're with for part of the game. I knew, at least. And my first impressions, to give a little summary before we, I'm sure, dive into like a bunch of aspects that we'll talk about today, is that my expectations for this game were quite tempered by the time I got to it. I expected it to be good, but I knew there were going to be some shortcomings narratively. I didn't have any other expectations, period. So leaving the game, I kind of find myself in like a pretty like neutral to, I don't know, because there's so many things about this game that I really think are impressive, that if you even watch me on my streams, because I've got the playthrough still up there, you'll see me really be wowed by so much of this game, and then really have like a sour taste in my mouth about a few different things, and not just probably the biggest elephant in the room. But I leave this game being really glad that I played it, and I could totally see myself playing it again. I sadly didn't have time to play any of the DLC. So Burial at Sea and episodes 1 and 2. I did, before this, watch like a recap of the Burial at Sea events, so I have like a loose idea of what happened, but I'll be really eager to hear from all of you about what that stuff could mean to you, and what I should think about it. But yeah, first impressions, neutral. Neutral's probably where I land. Is like, good game. I'd play it again, I think.
okay.
That's it just makes me think how much art exists that is just so time and place.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, to have played BioShock Infinite launch year, the year it came out, is it just a different experience? It just is. Like, no one played that game in 2013 and didn't like it. Like, I just looked at reviews. It's like the lowest review it gets on Metacritic is like an 84. It's like people went bananas for this. And
I think both good and bad. Like, I didn't have like all of the expectations and hype that I know surrounded this game. If anything, probably me knowing a little bit about some other stuff Probably, I think that's why I came in with tempered expectations.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of it to start for me.
Um, Jeremy or Dan, how about you guys? I'll give my take last. I think
Uh,
anybody.
oh,
Dan,
Jeremy.
why don't you go?
Oh, okay. My first impressions, it's funny because Nick was like, play this game in my memory. Maybe there was more, but I wasn't following it. Like, I didn't watch the trailers. Like, I didn't know anything about it beyond the next BioShock game and probably the setting because it was really kind of omnipresent, the Columbia look. Um, so I know there's a lot of plot points that were changed from the trailers, but none of that applied to me. I didn't know about it. I was living in sort of a blissful ignorance at the time. Um, so I think my first impressions were that I liked it. I really liked how it's such an interesting contrast how bright it is compared to BioShock, what a different art direction it is, but it still feels just as this is a kind of silly comparison, but the movies Hereditary and Midsummer are like same director, both horror movies, but one is like set in a 24-hour daylight and is maybe just as terrifying.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was interesting to compare and contrast because in 2013, I'm sure it hit me a little harder and culture was different. But now, like watching it again, I was like, wow, in my head, the game is saying, did you guys know that the past was racist? And I'm like, I, I learned that at the latest in 2016, but there really was an era where we thought like racism was a problem in the past, but we don't have to think about it so hard anymore. And that game that's what it feels the most dated to me actually, is it's squarely in that here's here's how it's bad. And I'm like, that is a really good lesson. I don't need to learn it from BioShock Infinite anymore.
Yeah, or the way that they present it. Did you know racism was bad? Here's every cultural stereotype ever used on these
Yeah.
particular races. It's strange. It's strange, and it didn't quite hit right for me either. But we'll get into that more. Jeremy, how about you?
Um, I think like that first introduction to Columbia is probably the high point of the game for me, but it's such a high point that I'll play the game probably for the rest of my life. Like I'll like at least go back and do the beginning like couple hours forever because it's so cool. Like it just really crushes what it's trying to do up top.
It's magical.
And
Mhm.
I there are things that I think about this game all the time, like the twins, for example, are like so sick, and like I think this is it's a really special. I mean, to me, it hit me as a really special game. So my first impressions were that it was really special and really unique and really cool. And then I didn't think about it for a long time. And then at some point in the future, somebody told me that, hey, you might want to go back and look at that game again. And, and I did.
And then they gave you the key to sing to Songbird and
yeah.
sent you back to your own time.
Yeah. But I'll say this though, I have such a weird relationship with this game because I had my first impression, then I had what I like intellectually began to understand about the game later, but without replaying it. Then I replayed it just now, and so those are all three different unique takes because playing it just recently, I had some things wrong, and I had some things wrong that I was thinking. I was a way harsher on it. In my yeah. I mean, I don't know when we'll dive in, but it's not. But like when I first played it, my memory is that like, oh, there's not that much race stuff in it. And then later I learned, no, it's actually like what it's doing with race is like not always hitting the mark. And I'm like, oh, okay. So then I had this harsh view of it. And then I played it again, and the whole thing is about race. The entire game is race stuff. And I was like, oh, it's like the whole thing is this. But I think that I was a little bit, maybe because I was expecting something a lot worse. I don't think I was like as harsh on like leaving BioShock Infinite this time. I was like, oh yeah, like I see what people are talking about. I see exactly where I would have done maybe made different choices, but different, you know what I mean? Like having just played it, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, it's a little not quite as bad as I believed.
I I appreciate that the revisionist take somewhat because this game is good and bad. I don't even like to say the word bad there because I think that this game is like a shotgun. It sprays in a bunch of different directions and it mostly hits the mark. But what I like about it is that there are a lot of active choices that the designers made, and that makes me give it a pass in some ways. I will say that this is the first telling of the story I especially in the first half, really found as metaphorical in fairly stark contrast to the first BioShock, which feels like it's more about what if this world was real, and this was more like what if this power fantasy could exist. We'll talk about it. Let's get into it right now. In fact, BioShock Infinite opens on a dark and stormy night. You're drunk in a boat with the two most annoying people in the world. I just kept wanting Booker to say, "Hey, could you guys drop the tweet thing for a minute? I'm trying to nap." I want to talk about Booker DeWitt because also contrasting BioShock, we have a fully voiced protagonist, a protagonist with a character, sort of. I have mixed feelings on him myself. I don't usually give this critique, but I'll say it. I think he should have been more drunk. I think my biggest problems with Booker is how few questions he asks. I think I don't understand him for a lot of the game. And in a way, I think that's intentional.
Yeah, why is he not just screaming the entire game, like out of fear of everything around him?
I will say, contrasting modern games, including Troy Baker performances, I think this game actually does a good job of justifying your character being this god tier killer. I think that that's so ingrained in his backstory that it actually doesn't bump for me a lot that you just kill every person in this floating city. Um, you're introduced to the Lutesses as well. Jeremy, you love them. They're sick. Can you explain these characters, please?
Yeah, they're like kind of aping off of the Nikola Tesla idea that people have in their brains of who Nikola Tesla is, in that they're just these super advanced scientists that are twins, and that's even that you're is not a reveal right away. Like you actually don't know who they are, and you're not supposed to know who they are for actually like. And maybe even unfortunately, a lot of the game,
Yeah.
it is most of the game. I think you even find out who they are kind of in the last sixth of the game, like the very last end of it. And yeah, they're probably the same person, actually, just from two different sides of the universe, coin, whatever, what have you. They're probably the most interesting thing, I think, narratively in what's going on in the game is this whole idea that's sort of revealed at the end of different lighthouses and different universe. It's an early example of like a multiverse.
It is.
I think it's a really brave like thing that this game does of finally answering the question, like, if you met yourself, would you kiss?
Yeah. And I bet they have. They talk. They seem like they're
content.
Yeah,
yeah. There seems to be, in a way, two different semi-incestual relationships in this. Although I guess is it incest if it's with yourself? Maybe not.
The great question.
Yeah.
There was a Cracked article about that like 15 years ago.
Read one or wrote one?
Maybe
He'll
both.
think about it. So you head up to Columbia. You have instructions. Bring us the girl and wipe away the debt. That's all you get. You got to go and ring bells at the top of a lighthouse. Yeah, bring in a lot of them. And then you sit in a chair that propels you to the literal high point of the game, Jeremy, above the freaking clouds.
I know.
And then
This
yeah,
can we
Connor, tell me.
So this, I want to just pause here quickly because the, we've already, it's already been difficult to not compare this game directly to BioShock. And I think it's going to be probably a constant in this episode because sometimes I like, not only do I like the execution of what this game does in some of those ways, like the approach to Columbia, similarly to the approach to Rapture, and how this game begins, you can see the parallels. This game seems to be doing a lot of that, and I think it's quite intentional. In a lot of ways, I think it actually succeeds personally. It's like some of the stuff I like the best about the game. And there was just so many moments in this game, like I was saying earlier, not only where I was going like, whoa, but also just appreciated, I think, those parallels. On the opposite end, Nick, like you were talking about Booker and how he's a full character as opposed to a character that you're told a little bit about in BioShock, the player character Jack. And in some ways, I think that works really well for this game, and in other ways, I think it's actually I don't think it succeeds. It's weird. I think, which kind of goes back to my feeling about so much of this game is I think some stuff is so beneficial and they nail it, and some stuff like Booker be having a full backstory and character, it doesn't quite work considering you guys were just talking about him. Like, why doesn't he ask more questions? We're playing as him, but the voice actor knows stuff that we don't. It's interesting, but I love the approach to Columbia to get us back there.
I kind of blame the writing a little bit. If we're going to talk about Booker specifically, like both Booker and Elizabeth are turning in like really good VO performances.
Definitely.
I think the problem though is that like the writing isn't strong enough in their two character voices to really sustain what they're trying to do. And we'll even get to, I'm sure we'll talk about the big narrative fucking problem that comes like at some point in the game. That I think that even that could have been landed better had they just taken all the dialogue out of Booker and Elizabeth's mouth. Like, I don't need them to tell me how to feel about what's happening on the screen. There's a lot of like them telling you, yeah, I guess it is true. The poor really do suffer. Like that. It's like literally that kind of dialogue where you're just like, ugh, like, okay. Like no one talks like that,
Whereas in a moment like Elizabeth noticing there's a guitar, Booker sits down and starts playing it and she sings, I find that 1,000 times more powerful than those dialogue moments you mentioned. Dan, yes.
I have a thought on that, and it's a complaint about the game, not about that scene though.
Okay.
The first time I played this, I missed it, and this time I replayed it almost totally blind, like besides memories, and I missed it again because
I missed it this last time.
Because like if you steal in that area, like there's an infusion and I grabbed it, and then like everyone turned on me and attacked me, so I reloaded to save. I was like, oh, that wasn't worth it. Down the hill from that is where those people attack you, like they ambush you. And so I was like, well, I don't want to go down there and kill people and have everyone turn against me. So I just didn't go down to that bar where that scene is. And then after I finished, I said, wait, where is that? And I looked it up on YouTube. I was like, oh, well, I think that's the game's fault if I do it twice.
That sucks. Connor, did you watch that scene?
Are you sure you're not talking about The Last of Us?
What the heck? None of you guys.
Oh man, Connor,
what you're talking about,
dude. It's like the best part. I mean, it's one of the best parts. It's a highlight, and I guess you can just. I mean, I did miss it this last time.
Out.
Yeah, it's just this little quiet moment where you just pick up a guitar and you start playing, and Elizabeth sings, and she sings the Circle song.
Will the circle be unbroken?
Yeah, will the circle be unbroken?
Refrain.
I don't think I saw this.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. Well, that's okay. It's not plot important, but it's nice character color, and
it's more important than
yeah,
plot.
You're right. Well, I'll give my critique now after we talked about the magicalness of the intro. I think that this game is overwritten, and I think I kind of thought that when I first played it, and I think it more now. If you go on the BioShock wiki and look at the cut content for BioShock Infinite, it is a long article with sections for characters that got cut, gameplay elements that cut, entire areas. I distinctly remember a couple of different trailers. One early trailer, maybe from 2010. Elizabeth was more like a witch. She has the outfit that she has on, I think, in the second half of the game, her mother's outfit, and she just is commanding like fireball, like a D&D wizard. There's another one where they fight. He's like the mayor or a senator or something. His name appears very briefly in the final game, but he's like a guy who commands crows. He doesn't even really show up, but he was a boss encounter. I think if you also go back and watch a lot of these trailers, you'll see that you can kind of piece together. In my mind, my reading, there is a little bit of a narrative through line that almost all the trailers end with Songbird showing up, which to me implies that these are the other attempts that Booker had made, which I've always really enjoyed that theory.
Interesting.
Yeah. Um, However, as the game stands, I think it bit off more than it could chew. And there is just so much. I don't know if maybe they had time constraints or maybe they just thought that people wouldn't be satisfied in Colombia. But I could walk around Colombia, like all of it. When you first get there, I love that aspect that you get there. Nobody wants to fight you. Unlike Rapture, it is on the surface level a place, a society that's working. And it bums me out how fast you get found out, and then the rest of the game is just running and gunning with very few exceptions. That, like you mentioned, Dan, you can break easily. You can get the people in Shantytown to fight you. I accidentally got the people outside of the Good Time Club to shoot me just by walking too close to a do not cross sign. Um, yeah, not to take too much time. Connor, did you have a thought there?
Well, I was just a bit, yeah. So, I mean, it's such an again, back to comparing the two games, the first game and then this game. It's something that I really did like about the opening of this game, and different parts of it was not just, kind of seeing, because when we get to Rapture and BioShock 1, so much of that game is like, wow, remember, like you're hearing about what it used to be and also like what it could have been had things gone a little better. And this is just interesting to see, like the world we're in now. We actually get to kind of experience a bit of what, at least what Colombia and its leaders you know, like ideally what they see the world as. So I really appreciate that. I also spent so much time in this open area just kind of like making sure I walked near everybody, all the NPCs with the exact same facial structure. I looked at every little stand. I looked at every little basket of lumpy fruit. Like it's just I heard this is an original comparison, but so much of this game in its big set pieces and its big environments feels like going to a theme park. It's very Disney-esque. Someone described it as magical earlier. And that's something that never went away from me in this game, even though I could maybe say whether or not I end up liking it more if it's more effective than Rapture is, but I really appreciate Columbia for what it is in this game.
It
Hope that wasn't
looks
too much of a sidetrack.
No, it looks like a Disney movie. Elizabeth basically is a Disney princess.
Hmm.
It feels like you're walking around Disneyland, and then when you go on the skylines, it feels like you're on a Disneyland ride.
Yeah,
I think the comparison is apt. I think it's also intentional. I uh, I think it works for me most of the time.
sure.
Um, One of the ways I think this game is a little overwritten, gosh, there's so much to talk about there. When I use that phrase, I think of a director like Ryan Johnson, director of Looper and The Last Jedi and other movies of that type. When he writes and directs a movie, the Knives Out and Glass Onion especially is a good example of this. I think that he's the kind of person who takes so long on a script that he becomes married to certain ideas and doesn't edit them out even when they stop making 100% sense, or they start making you ask questions that you feel like you shouldn't be asking, which is where having a ghost mom fight in this game, that kind of lands in that category for me.
Give me some more. What are some more things you think could be cut? That was a good one.
I'm not saying cut, but necessarily. But
I'm saying cut. You can cut that ghost mom right now, and I'd be fine.
That takes way too long.
It's just a long time of it.
Yeah,
and it's not that emotional. It's not like that resonant or anything.
About her ghost mom,
and you don't really understand why it's happening.
She's
and it's not even
that
really
sad
explained
about it. Yeah, she doesn't. I don't think anyone knows what's happening in that.
I think that there are some places where they took half measures. Like racism is a good example of that, because I think it's really weird that Booker makes no comments one way or the other, especially since this is the Booker that wasn't baptized. And even though he was regretful of his actions, didn't feel he could change them. Even though you're given the option in a scene that happens very shortly after what we're talking about, where you can throw a ball at a racially mixed couple, there's something about it that I just find so strange, that Comstock is running this racist utopia. Comstock is Booker, but Comstock is the one who was baptized and feels born anew. My nose is bleeding, just like in the game. I'm talking about too many alternate realities.
No, you make a really good point. This is like the big elephant in the room that I was privy to coming into the game. I didn't know how it all went down or what it spoke to, but I knew that it sort of fumbled in a way. It's on one hand kind of like I previewed earlier, and I think a joke. I do on a certain level appreciate that a game of this era, 2013, was even approaching a discussion about race. It's kind of the bare minimum, but I guess if I had to say, I do appreciate it. I think that where it ends up bothering me is in a couple spots is that we're talking about how it is such a big part of this game, and it really is, but then it kind of totally disappears after a certain point. And to me, that sort of feels like, it was almost kind of used as a bit of a prop. Nick, it also is strange that Booker's I guess cordial to the black characters that you interact with in this game. But he also doesn't really share an opinion. And then I don't need to belabor the point about this, but when the equating of, slave rebellion versus slavery itself obviously is problematic, but yeah, I think the prop thing is maybe even the bigger issue for me, where it's we don't care about this anymore. It was just kind of almost like set dressing for it. At least how I initially am coming away from it.
2 points on that. Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, you sound like you got something.
I want to say real quick here.
Jeremy was just going to riff.
Yeah, the good time for that.
I was going to play some jazz for you.
We didn't talk about this before, but I'm just going to say blanket. Let's not talk about Burial at Sea unless we want to tack something on at the end, but especially since Connor hasn't played it. The only thing that I'll say about it, because it directly ties into what you're talking about, is I find Daisy Fitzroy to be kind of a frustrating character, but I mean, is she or is she not? It's not even the same one that dies, that the one that we met. Yeah. So that it's going back to overwritten, there's a lot there. But Daisy Fitzroy has a moment, I believe it's in Burial at Sea 2, where you get the reveal that the Lutesses put her up to killing Fink and holding that kid hostage in order to help Elizabeth progress. Did you know about that, Connor? I think that it actually strengthens your point that this person is a prop for this freaking white lady.
Interesting.
Karen.
The thing. So here, well, okay.
I didn't mean that.
I don't have a problem with that though. I don't have I guess I have a. So there's layers to this, right?
Yeah,
I have a problem with Ken Levine using racism as a prop. I don't have a problem with bad guys in a game using it as a prop. I don't have a problem with Booker being a racist. Like or something like that. Like that's not where I think my issue is. My issue is kind of around this other thing we're talking about, where it's like this big punch that gets pulled, and this whole nebulous like, well, what is it, and what is it to you, and maybe it's all, and maybe we're all just kind of guilty and not guilty, huh? It's that kind of like wishy-washy take that is emblematic of the time that this came out.
Yeah, and I can put a pin on that too a little bit. Like Dan mentioned, you see this in comedy so much from that era, the early 2010s, I guess you'd say. Ironic racism really came back in comedy, and you can still listen to podcast episodes where people say stuff that they should not have been saying because Obama was president and they felt like racism's over. Exactly what Dan said. It's a thing of the past. We can make fun of it. Or in this game, they're not really making fun of it as much as saying, wasn't that bad? Yeah, it is. We get it. But
that's good. I just want to voice
execution.
I just want to voice that like it shouldn't have been coming from who it was coming from, but it isn't like I don't think I have the same take of like, oh yeah, we get racism is bad, so let's not put it in our game. No, I think throw it in there because we needed to see stuff like that at that time more than ever. Stuff like where you have like an interracial couple that you're about to beam with a baseball, like. That's heavy. That's
and
like
if you don't hurt them, they help you later.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like what I'm trying to say is, instead of being like, let's not talk about it, let's have a game set here. They like really leaned into it, which I think is kind of rare. Like for that time period, it's just a bummer that they didn't land that plane.
Yeah, totally.
And they couldn't have because I don't think you can really land that plane if you're white writing this story.
Well, I actually have a couple of solutions for them, Jeremy.
I'll pause us on that note. I think that ultimately my issue isn't even the racism aspect, because I mean, ideologically, I agree with you, Jeremy. I think you should be able to talk about that stuff. But I think that when we talk about planes, Columbia's like 6 planes tied together with balloons on strings, and it's got too many hands and too many buckets. And I think even the racism element comes back to probably my top 2 complaints about this game, which is the Christianity of it and the politics of it. This game thinks that they're combined. I think
Well, that's the point, right? It's like the ultimate combination of church and state. That's what Columbia is.
But when we're talking about the source, I looked this up to be super specific. Ken Levine does not come from a religious background. It was his version of Christianity was the first thing they put in the game. Then a developer threatened to quit because he felt that it was misrepresented. So Ken Levine went into the New Testament. He read about forgiveness, and that's mostly the religious like theme that keeps coming back is like redemption, forgiveness, baptism, the same kind of cycle essentially. But I still get the feeling that he doesn't totally understand it. And more to the point, I think that this game's politics, in contrast to BioShock, are way too convoluted. I feel like you get to you're about to go in the bathysphere to rapture. No gods, no masters, only man. Got it. Capitalist utopia. I got it instantly. Columbia. Okay, there's racism, there's Christianity. I'm getting baptized, but it's like 1912. So like, what were the politics of that time? Wait a minute. What actual system is there? Now there's this revolution. Are they socialists? Are they communists? What are they? Is it a race thing?
And then at one point he's like, can I just do BioShock 1 again? Can I just do that one again, please? Like it feels like he wants Columbia to also kind of be Rapture as well. And then the ending kind of confirms like it's all just the same, man, and come on, man.
Yeah, and I think it was visualized as kind of the inverse, but in a confusing way where I can't really sum up what Columbia is in one sentence. Right. And
and I think what Connor said earlier too is like is I mean, we've also all said it, but like just like forgetting about the whole racism plot to your whole game, like that the whole foundation of Columbia is built on this, like this idea, like that's good. Like that's a good setting. That's a good story to be telling. There's a good story happening there for some of the game. And then to be like, no, actually we don't care. Actually it's about this other stuff. Like that is frustrating because
that kind of like gets back to Nick's point, I think, of like, the too many ideas and being overwritten and not being able to choose or like take something out of your story that you initially had in there. I think that's tied together.
I think overwritten is a good way to put it too, because like objectivism isn't a real ideology. I mean, it is, but there's no like Ayn Randian country, so it's a very. It kind of made it too powerful in BioShock, I think, in that like so were some people in real life who were like, well, maybe, but in comparison to like the real life past, I think that it's just so much more complex. Like when they go into the factory and it's all about class, then it's like, well, this is another gigantic issue. How are we going to cover this? And okay, we're on to the next thing. Like it's not. There's no time. It doesn't for a 15-hour game or whatever it is.
And you can breeze through this game. I really breezed through it because I enjoy it and it's always changing. So you're always kind of looking to the next thing. But I ultimately wish I could live in any individual section that much longer.
I think the pace of this game, I might say, at least for me, might outdo the pace of the original BioShock, I think. I really I really took my time with most of this because I wanted to soak it in and I'm seeing it all for the first time. I'm trying not to miss story stuff that I still totally missed and probably am coming in here not as prepared as I would have liked. But I did feel that like every 40 minutes or so, if not quicker, I was sort of moving through a space into a new set piece or a new story point or area. And that was like exciting to have that momentum feel like it was going. Jeremy, I feel like you mentioned that you kind of blew through this on this playthrough too.
I was shocked. As somebody, I was BioShocked. As somebody who didn't had played this game before, not needing to just sit and graze at every little area, it was like an 8-hour thing for me to get through. I mean, it was just like I like blew through this game really, really fast, and it was like really, really easy, and I barely engaged with any of the. That's another like it feels like we're kind of like saying more negative things about the game than positives. There are a lot of positives we should spend time talking about, but the combat's not one of them, and that's one thing where I freaking was just literally shotgun. That's it. Goodbye. Like I'm doing this, and that's it. And that was the whole game for me. Was just doing that, and then just like BioShock 1, electrocuting everybody. Like I could have engaged with other things, but why when I can just.
Well, here's a big thing of that too, is that the combat has some really, at least one huge difference to me, which I noticed immediately. And like, for better or worse, you can find what you like in this game and really not pivot. When we were playing through BioShock, I was experimenting. I did find my things that I really enjoyed and leaned on, but that kind of changed throughout the game. This game, because you can only hold 2 weapons at a time, and basically all the plasmids I think you can have in your wheel. Is there any exceptions? Vigors. Oh, see.
No. Yeah, you can. Yes. There are only 8 of them, and you can have all of them at once. And yes, please. They're completely different.
Yeah, I am so. Please forgive me. I'm gonna need a lot of forgiving on this episode, folks. But you have access to all of your vigors at any point as you collect them. But yeah, guns, you can only have 2 weapons at a time outside of your melee weapon, the skyhook. I think is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Or am I just thinking of basketball?
I think you're right.
Okay.
Skyhook
is what Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
It's like a special move.
Star of Airplane.
Yeah. Oh, you know him, right? UCLA graduate. And speaking to that though, there is like a range of weapons. This might even get us into a discussion about like enemies and enemy types too, because there's a lot to talk about. I ended up almost, unless I was running out of ammo or really wasn't feeling like trying stuff, I led with the carbine because I like a bit of distance. I also upgraded it early. So it was pretty strong. And then that second weapon just kind of changed for me depending on what I was feeling, or like if I was going into a fight or had died and then was rebattling something that I needed to change. Jeremy, I used the shotgun for a while. I used the hand cannon I like a
Oh, I
lot.
love that hand cannon.
Pretty good weapon there. I use the sniper a bit because it's kind of required in some spaces. I use the volley gun, the RPG, but yeah, by a certain point of the game, way earlier than the original, I was just set in my ways. But and I was using the bucking Bronco is my go-to. I
Oh,
love
Ooh.
throwing dudes up in the air. They float up there for a while, and you get some free shots. It was great.
did we all get the achievement combination shock using the 8 different combos of vigors?
I did not.
I had to look it up because I couldn't figure it out. There are 8 vigors, there are 8 combinations, but some of the vigors do not appear in the combinations. Like Return to Sender, which is the last one you get, doesn't really mesh with anything. Whereas you can use Undertow to grab people with water tentacles and then you shock them. You can shock the crows or light the crows on fire. There's a lot of double dipping like that. Usually it's one thing and then you set it on fire or you electrocute it.
I didn't even know that that was an option. I would have loved to experiment more, and I probably should have, but for whether it was me or the game, I didn't. How did what did you all lean on, ability or weapon wise?
Here's how it goes for me. I pick a gun that I like and I shoot it until I run out of ammo, and then Elizabeth doesn't give me ammo for it, so I move on to the next thing. And I use that for a while. I I think the sound design on the guns is great in this game.
I think the game in general,
Yeah,
personally.
agreed. But the like gun sound effects, it has a real Ben Burt quality, the guy from the original Star Wars and Indiana Jones. The machine gun sounds so awesome. It sounds like the machine gun that the Indy shoots Nazis with. Like you feel the kinetic
Mm.
bursts. I thought machine gun was fun. Shotgun's definitely my favorite. Carbine I like. Pistol okay, hand cannon okay. Don't like the repeater. I think the rate of fire is too slow. I'd rather have that machine gun. And then the bigger ones are fun, but like I use that crank gun until I run out of ammo and then I move on to something
Yeah.
else. Oh, and vigors, um I use the shock one a lot and the ravens a lot. I find myself setting traps because I don't feel like the base version of the vigors is as powerful as the base version of plasma. It's like the electric one, you get it way later and it felt weaker to me.
I think you're right. Dan, did you have stuff you leaned on this time around?
This time it was all shotgun and sniper.
Okay.
Some
Dude.
shoddy snipes.
Dude.
By the like midpoint of the game, like it was all just sniper from a distance.
Yeah.
Which is a big difference from the first game. There's way more wide open combat. You can have Elizabeth generate cover for you or automatons, but just in general, the distance between enemies is greatly increased because it's primarily outdoors instead of in.
Yeah, and these
I
like
think
corridors.
I think that the combat in this game is definitely not my favorite part and kind of just gets in the way of the story, but I want to compliment it because the music, the cues are in my brain forever. Like the as the combat starts and the do when it's over, and like
Yeah.
finding vigors, like the doom doom, like all those sounds they're in there. They came back immediately.
For sure.
replaying it.
On the note of sounds, Jeremy, wait.
I was gonna ask how everybody liked the like aerial aspect of the combat, like being able to like jump into the sky and then jump back down.
I just get tired of it. I mean, it's the same route, and if I like, it's really fun to fly around and then one shot people with the shotgun. It's not fun when you miss them and have to kind of go back around.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's like a mechanic that would have been way more improved if it was a third person action game, I think.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're like in the guy's face like means that you can't see as good. You know what I mean? Like you can't see the whole area around you. Like so
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, it's a bummer. You know?
I did get
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
I did get Elizabeth trapped on the sky rail at one point. She was just going back and forth like this for a minute while I realized what I think I had moved the crate and then accidentally moved it back. So she was just like, whoop, whoop, whoop. Sorry, hold on, sorry.
Goodness.
We haven't even talked about her yet. We'll talk about her in a minute. But two quick things. First off, as far as vigors go, what was everyone's favorite cut scene when you first drank one? Because they all have different impacts.
For me, none of them. I don't like any of those. Every time that happens, I'm seeing the grossest thing ever happen to my hands. I think this game, maybe it's a point it's trying to make, but this game just like it's so cruel and like I would describe the hand cut scenes as like really just disgusting in ways that like I just every time I saw it I had like a physical reaction to it. So I don't want to yuck anybody's yum.
For example, you drink Devil's Kiss, the fire one, and his fingers literally melt down to the bone. It is
no
freaking
thanks.
nasty. Undertow, that's my favorite, where he has like barnacles or squid tentacles like coming out of his hands. It's freaking disgusting.
It's very Mortal Kombat 10.
Oh,
yeah.
wow. Yeah.
10. That's a good pull.
That's the one we played at your house.
Oh yeah, that explains it. Um, and then soundtrack. I just want to touch on this really quick here. I think it is a dang shame that this game has never had a officially released soundtrack of all their covers. I'm sure it's just too expensive to do it, but there are some bangers on this soundtrack. Scott Bradley, you can find him on YouTube. He did a few, including Everybody Wants to Rule the World, which is one of my favorites. I also really like the Girls Just Want to Have Fun that plays on the pier. I think the music owns in this game.
It's like a masterpiece level stuff going on with all of that. Like I think the first thing you see is the Beach Boys song on with the
my gosh
on the ship, and it's like
Yeah.
you're like, what am I playing? Like, what is this? Like, it's so good.
Even initially landing on Columbia, you have this baptism sequence where you're walking through this church covered in water. His socks must have been soaked by the end of that. But the choral version of Will the Circle Be Unbroken,
Yeah.
I think is really beautiful. Story note, I think he should reject the baptism at the beginning of the game. I think it's so weird
was
that
it
he
kind of
just
forced on him.
It is, but I don't know. I guess there's a difference between performing the action and actually believing it.
Was it supposed to be the same priest too?
It is.
A
I
blind
noticed this because even though his dialogue is, this one looks unclean, doesn't he? He's clearly blind when he's old.
Mhm.
So that's why he doesn't recognize you.
Before I get there, I want to touch on the music too, because I think it's all just briefly.
Yeah.
Both the quality of the tracks, whether it's these covers of songs that we know in pop culture like the Beach Boys, but also the original compositions and sound cues like you guys were talking about are great. And then also like one of the things I do really like is the explanation for why we're hearing these songs in the first place is really cool, because for so much of the game I was like, why am I hearing Cyndi Lauper? Like, how is this possible? What's the explanation?
Cyndi Lauper laid a plopper. What is this?
Okay, is that off the cuff, Jeremy?
That's written on one of the protest signs in the game.
Yeah, Cyndi Lauper laid a plopper.
Oh, wow. Now I need to get that protest sign. But yeah, the explanation, I mean, there's a lot of things in this game that I was dissatisfied by the explanation once it's revealed to you, but the music stuff and how that got into the world, I thought was satisfying.
Yeah. Which is the explanation, if anybody missed it or doesn't know for some reason. There are two brothers, the Finks, and Jeremiah Fink is the factory worker, racial exploiter, and his brother Albert is a musical plagiarist who, through listening to Elizabeth's tears throughout the city, has been able to steal songs from all different generations. Credence shows up in the protest section.
Yes.
Not on the nose at all.
But I listened to the whole thing because it's a really good cover.
Yeah.
It's good. It is really good.
Sorry, there was something you were talking about that we had gotten into. Oh, the baptism stuff. Okay. Maybe one of you can explain this to me. and this is might be getting into story spoilers, so maybe we
No,
should
let's
just
go.
save it. But I'm like,
Go for it.
what's the point of the baptism scene that we actually go through? Like versus the end of the game where it is that split timeline moment. I don't and also my first playthrough, so there's plenty that I missed, but I don't we get baptized at the beginning of the game, like regardless of what happens.
That's part of my big problem with that scene.
I wasn't wondering if I was missing something.
It's just I feel like it exists there to show you this happens to people. Sometimes they get baptized, and then you remember that later when it happens. Then when it's your memories jogged that this was a thing that happened to you.
Okay,
I guess.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's extremely clunky. Comstock is Booker DeWitt. Can we just say that? Is that? Are we, yeah. Can
Finkel
we just?
Is Einhorn. Einhorn.
Yeah.
Is
Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. That is not a good twist to me. I saw that coming. Oh, Zoom gave me a little thumbs up. I saw that coming from. I think you understand that that's going to happen. I think pretty early. I think, unfortunately, like
I'll say I missed it.
If you, I mean, I just think like narratively, like right, like you're like, well, this could happen, and if it did, it'd be disappointing, and then it does happen. Is sort of like how I remember experiencing that.
You know, it's crazy that you say that. I remember how this game made me feel. I do not remember being blown away by that twist. I don't even remember if I knew about it or not. But when I left my dorm room to walk around a wintry college night, I distinctly remember it was the multiverse stuff and the aspects of choice, and that was what stuck with me way more than that little twist.
The twist with Elizabeth is a bigger and more important and more emotional twist, that was your daughter and you like sent her away, you sold her. That's crazy to me. The fact that you're the same person actually just makes a lot of sense when you think about like how that exchange worked. You know,
I want to explain the plot for Connor's benefit a little chronologically, and then I'll talk about why it's annoying.
Okay, cool.
And also, I do want to say, because Jeremy, you pointed out that we're talking a lot about criticisms of this game. I've always been someone who's criticized art that I love. I'm sure it's annoying for some people to hear that, but I want to state, like, this is probably still a 5-star game for me, out of 100. No, out of 100. I do view this game as a piece of art, sometimes more than a game, in ways where I think that the violence isn't necessarily justified by the story. If this had been a Steam game and I was walking through and exploring it without fighting people every 30 seconds, I would not have a problem with that.
I was thinking about that today because in like 2015, I went through a big walking simulator phase and like Gone Home and Firewatch and What Remains of Edith Finch and even like Night in the Woods or Glitch Hikers. And I'm kind of like, I wonder how much of it was from this, because really, like, the parts I remember of the game positively are the beginning and the singing and when you're on the beach and Elizabeth is dancing, and even, you know, all the little elevator moments even. And the negative ones, I'm like, I gotta fight on the dock.
Yes.
I fight the stupid ghost mom. I hate the last battle. I'm just like, I don't care. It goes on forever.
Yes, Dan, cook more.
It could have
Let
been
him cook.
Simulator. Maybe that inspired me, so I'll give it credit there. It's a beautiful game. I love this game. I just think playing it sucks.
Gone Home is also like by some of the BioShock developers, I believe, right? Like, isn't that?
Look that up. I don't know.
Yeah.
And Dan, for what it's worth, you have become probably my biggest indie gamer friend. You play a lot of stuff on Steam.
That's concerning because all I've played this year is like Hades 2 in early access.
But you've often played games, I feel like, ahead of me. There's lots of games I still haven't played. Most of the ones you listed there, I honestly haven't played still.
Well, their moment is kind of past, but some of them have held up. Night in the Woods has held up. But yeah, it is interesting that it was this huge mainstream game that was kind of an indie game in that way, or had some similar sensibilities, and then there's combat.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know we've kind of moved past a lot of the combat stuff, but the one thing I kept coming back to during my playthrough was how there was there's I don't know, I was feeling conflicted because on one hand, the enemies in this game, the Columbia Guard or whatever, and then at some point the Vox Populi and other people, they are far less scary and intimidating. And this game, I think, is for the most part far less scary and intimidating than BioShock. There's some moments that really got me that I think really work. A lot of them with the Songbird, I want to say. But it's a lot less scary in general. The splicers and the enemies you fight in the original are also so much more scary, but because they're like dehumanized, I don't feel as near as much of like the anguish or like weird feeling I might feel of killing waves of humans in this game. Even no, but the thing is, I sort of grapple with that because I'm like, is it more powerful because of what I know that they stand for? At least, the Columbia Guard. Is it more powerful or more impactful to have to choose to kill a human, but the human is bad versus this sort of like dehumanized, warped person? Just something I don't know where I land with any of it. It's just something I kept grappling with in this game as I like headshot like thousands of soldiers.
Revolutionaries and evil city guards.
I think it gets more complicated too, because then you go into different universes and see the living dead people you've murdered in the other universe, and you're like, did I cause that here? Am I just murdering people from different multiverses? Are they alive and millions of others? It's even more confusing.
Yeah.
There is also a specific call out from Elizabeth when you first kill someone, and she's like, "You killed those people," and you kind of move on. I'm going back to it again. I think he would have been better as a full-on drunk, because I just think
like a Homer Simpson level drunk.
Yeah, I mean the kind of drunk where you wouldn't ask a question when you see the old army general you used to work for, like here. Like I've just felt like he takes stuff like that on the chin so much, and if he was like, I actually used to serve with Slade in the war, let's go kill him. I don't know, it's just there's some weird inconsistencies.
The Elizabeth call out too is interesting because I feel like the moment that it came in any game, because there's so many games where an NPC should probably call you out for the violence you're causing. But I want to say when Elizabeth does it, it still makes sense to me why she would have such a huge emotional reaction to this. But I think it comes as like you are both being hunted by these people. And it kind of felt obvious to me in that moment that there was really no choice, them or us thing. So it undercut it a bit, but I was like, it's been a while since I've seen a character react like that in a game where in so many games we are just like mowing down NPCs by the dozen.
Yeah, she straight up runs away from you. I fully forgot that.
Yeah.
But it is that moment, and depending on what choice you make, I always get stabbed in the hand, whatever I did. I think you have to ring the guy's bell. But I like that moment where he's clearly on the phone with security. I just have to say we need to talk about Elizabeth. We've gone way too long without doing that. Elizabeth is probably I think she's the best character in the game, like easily. I think she holds a candle as one of the better characters in the BioShock franchise. With the exception of Burial at Sea, I'm just kind of discounting that for the most part. I got beef with it a little bit. I just think it's so freaking depressing. But I like her in this game, although do I have some eye rolling when you first meet her and she's a literal Disney princess and she's doing all this stuff a little bit. But I think Courtney Draper, the actress who portrays her, does a really good job with the voice. You may know this actress from Disney Channel's The Jersey, from the Disney Channel original movie The 13th Year, a movie I made my parents watch with me, and we had Papa Murphy's Pizza.
And that was
she like the love interest?
She was the love interest, yeah.
What were you saying, Dan? Sorry.
Oh, that was like last week, right, Nick?
Yeah, it was last week when I was home in Washington. No, I remember being embarrassed that I made them sit down to watch that movie with me. It's basically about a boy going through puberty, but he turns into a merman.
1999 Disney Channel original
That's
movie.
sick, dude.
Yeah.
I watched it too. I don't know what to tell you. We should just make the rest of it be about this movie.
It was very much
I'm
our
down.
era to watch those DComs, I call
Yeah.
them.
Hmm.
But Elizabeth, what's everybody's take on her? I remember being fascinated with her before the game started and just waiting to get to her. It takes a hot second.
It really does. Maybe I'll lead off because I don't have a fully formed opinion yet, and it was so recent for me. But she was something I was just anticipating for so much of this game, and the first it takes like it took me about 3 or 4 hours to get to her. The introduction is it is a little, I don't know how to describe it, but Nick, you put it well, where it is a little eye rolly on how Disney Princess E she is. But I love the introduction, and that's one of many moments in this game that feels like you're on a Disney ride because you keep walking through these little observation rooms, kind of very akin to so much of the original BioShock, where you're the only way you ever see a character like that's not a splicer is through something like this. Whereas in this game, something I like about this game, seeing characters up close and personal. The introduction was strong, the escape sequence was awesome, and overall as a character, I guess I'm positive on her. There's some things I definitely want to nitpick, but overall, I think the impact was strong in my first playthrough for me. But what about those of you who have played this before? Like Jeremy, do you have an opinion on this?
I mean, I liked her a lot when the first time I played the game for sure. Like I think just my Nick, you said the word twee earlier, also eye rolly. I mean, I think that like times have changed and this character might be written a little differently these days if she came out today, maybe.
The
She's
most
like
Disney thing that happens is that she wakes up on the beach, which don't even get me started on Battleship Bay. How is there a floating beach in the sky? I could not figure that out. But the first thing she does is, oh, that's singing. I have to go to the music and dancing. And I even though I like that sequence visually,
yeah.
it's just that motivation.
She's also a big problem in the whole Daisy Fitzroy part of the game too.
Yes.
Like she's like a huge and there's a specific nitpick I have where oh gosh, I mean you can't talk about that part all day, but the whole thing is that Daisy Fitzroy has a kid. And like right, she's like holding a kid, she's gonna murder a child or something. I don't like the kid stuff and we got to save the kid and oh my God, what if a kid dies? It's going to be such a big deal. Like that bums me out because I feel like it's a cloak and dagger, like anti-choice message, like this whole, like we have to like, oh, these precious babies, these precious children. Like, I don't know. So for that, I knock her a bunch of points down.
Fun fact about Daisy Fitzroy. Aisha Tyler recorded 47 minutes of dialogue for that character that they did not use.
Ooh.
Because she's not the voice.
Oh, yeah. It was like, I didn't know she played her.
It's not. It's Kimberly Brooks, who plays Oracle in the Arkham games,
Huh.
who is a good voice actor.
What happened to Aisha Tyler?
No clue. But
did she read the script and decide, hell no?
After recording 47 minutes?
Yeah.
I'm shocked she recorded that much.
What? Yeah, but I guess here's what I'll say. She animates really well. Like I think her animations are really, really cool. I think she does have really strong parts of the game, especially towards the end. I feel like her character change and seeing her in the future is just really cool and really powerful. And that's to me when the game and then when you recontextualize a lot of the game, knowing that that's your daughter, there's a much I feel much more strongly about Elizabeth at that point in the game. But I think so I guess kind of like Connor was saying, good, bad, this, that.
For what it's worth, this is underlined early on that her arc is kind of transition from girl to woman. And I think some of my mixed feelings goes back to the question of the author. Is this the person who should be telling this story in particular? Sorry, Deepu, yes, your thoughts on Elizabeth.
I like her. I think she's a good inciting incident. I think she's an excellent companion as an NPC. I think that she immediately makes herself so valuable that from a gameplay point, you're like, I miss her when she's not here. There's an interview that either I can't find, or like I think an interview. Either I can't find because Google is trash now, or I dreamt it. But I swear in this interview, there was like Ken Levine was told for the game he needed it to have more combat. Like they wanted more combat, and it had to have a male main character. And if that is true, even if it's false, actually, I wish she were the main character. I think her story is more interesting. And no spoilers for the DLC. I know that kind of changes, but I have also problems with the DLC. Although I liked it more this time, and I know we won't go too far. But
I'm gonna revisit it, and if the patrons want it, maybe we can reconvene for a Burial at Sea episode down the line. And I offer that knowing that those DLCs are pretty darn short.
I still didn't finish them again this time, but I would.
I did finish the first one, but then when I heard we probably won't be talking about them, I was like, well, maybe I won't.
How long did that take you to knock out? Like 2 hours?
Yeah, it was like 2.5 hours. I don't know. That one though, I was actually taking a lot more time with because, and we won't talk about it. Rapture's looking pretty good in that game, and I wanted to look at more Rapture. I was like, ooh.
Look, Rapture looks good in Infinite. From the little bit you see, I was happy to be back there.
Oh yeah, it was cool.
Do we think that while we're talking about Elizabeth, the coin mechanic or always throwing you stuff was a way to just like continue to interact with the character and make her feel like she was like in the environment with you searching around?
That is the intention.
I accept every coin she tosses at me. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
You know, here's the thing that's kind of interesting. They put a lot of work into her AI to make her really good. But since you mentioned Last of Us, that's all I can think, because Ellie does that and more. And you actually get to play as her too. It feels like for as much work as Elizabeth has, that game just does that aspect better. Although I agree. I like Elizabeth a lot. I like having her around. And yeah, I always take those coins. I always take those salts, health. That she gives me the most sparingly, I feel like, especially when I need it.
Yeah.
I think Dan's whole thing about if she was the main character though fixes a lot of from the game for me actually. Like this should be that kind of a thing, right? Where you're like, I don't know what anything is. And then you have this drunk weirdo showing you around and he's like, do this, do that. And you have to like make choices based on like, oh, do I trust this guy? Do I not? Like, I don't know. I just like that better. And it interacts with a lot of the sociological problems of the game better too. Is it like she's just like a person being born for the first time. She doesn't know anything. So
totally.
Here's the deal. She is the main character. That's my contention.
Yeah, right.
However,
play as her. Yeah.
That is the flaw, I think. The fact that you don't get to play as her at all, I think that it suffers from that. Also, I think that a game like this, and just like we talked about with BioShock, sometimes when the game is early to do something, I tend to forgive it a little bit more. And I know that a game like this walked so that God of War 2018 could run, where you have the moment where you ask Atreus to do something and he tells you no. Like they hadn't even thought of that yet here. If she's around, she's going to be helping you. If she's not, you're in trouble.
Big time.
Just story beats. Oh, because we never actually got to the chronology. I wanted to explain this for anyone's benefit. In 1893, the pivotal moment of Booker's life happens. I think this is the year. The baptism flashback. In one timeline it happened, in one it didn't. It's always Schrodinger's cat in this game. It's either this way or that way, and then logically, like Jeremy says, no choice matters. It's all the same. But avoiding that for the moment, Comstock becomes Comstock because Booker was baptized and he took this religious identity and formed a new identity. In my opinion, a little bit of a misunderstanding of baptism, but he's essentially reborn as a new person. Whereas the Booker who didn't get baptized in his timeline became the drunk. His wife died in childbirth. Was she Lady Comstock? I don't know. But she died. Eventually, he gives his baby Anna away to Comstock, who has found this Booker using the Lutesses through a different timeline to try to get a baby, because you find out through one of the voxophones that he was sterilized by their experiments. That's also why he looks like an old man, and presumably why he has a different voice now.
He goes to the Rapture voice gargler, Nick.
Yeah, he's popped by and got the Big Daddy voice machine. Yeah. Made his voice higher pitched than his younger counterpart. Yeah. Does that part of it make sense to you so far? Did you understand that right? And then the reason that she can use tears is because during this transaction, part of her finger got left behind.
Yeah, the pinky, which,
yes,
for as clunky as, you know, a lot of the explanation and the timey-wimey of it all, which, you know, is very clunky, I did think that moment was cool in the game, and I was like, it was very much an aha, that's how this happens. I also say I didn't see like I said, I didn't see the Booker as Comstock, Einhorn as Finkel coming. But I was speculating early on, like, is she my daughter? Because I don't know. They probably give you enough hints, or like there's enough contextual clues to where you're like, well, there's not really like a romantic relationship forming here. And I only asked why, not because there has to be one, but because I feel like that would be the default in most games, where especially with a character that they, for like the last third of it, dress up the way they do.
Yeah, and have you doing her corset at the end. Tying it.
Yeah. So I'm glad there was no like Luke and Leia mishap of like, oh, we shouldn't have kissed, huh? But anyway, Jeremy, you're gonna say something.
I just want to ask Nick about the whole thing with baptism, and then like also like the misunderstanding about Christianity, because I was raised super Christian. I think Connor, you were too, right? Like raised at going to church and stuff. What
Nick,
is
you too?
Yes. Yeah. Defru and I were both raised Lutheran, but the different sects.
What is the misunderstanding about baptism, in your opinion, about in this game? And also what is the misunderstandings around religion? Because I guess I'm just, the whole time I'm playing this game, I'm thinking, yeah, this is a guy who used this opportunity to start a cult. That's what I'm thinking. So what's your take on it?
I just think it's overcomplicated. I think if he's creating a cult, that's one thing. To wrap it in the guise of Christianity and also nationalism and American nationalism and merge them together, as much as I like the statues of the founders
Buff
and stuff.
Buff Ben Franklin.
Yes, yeah, and realizing that Lincoln is evil in their worldview.
Yeah.
In my mind, it's the Lincoln who is evil.
I want to preemptively apologize because I don't know if I can surmise this accurately, and my own thoughts on faith are probably different to a lot of people's. But I think that he, Ken, we'll call him Ken. He read.
Please call him Ken.
By his own wording, he read the New Testament like while they were already in the making of this game, and I think that there is a lot of I just think there's nuance in what like a baptism means, and the idea of actively giving yourself over to something to be born anew, but you're still new. I mean, you're still yourself. And part of the way I think that this game gets really overwritten is in the multiverse aspect, where it seems like his interpretation of baptism is the same as creating a new universe in the multiverse. Every time you go through this procedure, you're creating a new version of yourself, literally. And to me, it's always been way more metaphorical than that.
You mean in real life, baptisms are more metaphorical to you?
Yeah, but
Okay.
also in the game too, because even though it's mostly played as metaphorical, it's also played as kind of literal that he is this new person who sounds different, who looks different, seems to have different beliefs, but also because we don't really know what Booker's beliefs are, I just have a hard time figuring out what Comstock's plan even is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, well, huh. Interesting.
Well,
I actually do think this is an interesting aspect of the game and worth a little discussion. My take is that you know how like con men will just suddenly zip into religion really nicely. They just fit in really well there. And like this whole idea of like choice in the game is like, well, once Booker was baptized, the whole idea is like he chose this new path, which is I'm going to be this like, you know, pseudo religious, but then also just start this whole like universe around myself. I mean, it is a hybrid of our country and religion in a way that echoes what our country really is, which is that kind of just on the ground in a lot of ways. But I guess that's just my take on it. I never considered that the anything with the baptism was literal, like that, like the dunking of it was a mechanic. I never considered that. I was always just like, yeah, that was the moment in time when he chose to go this way instead of that way.
This is art, and it is subjective, and there's interpretations, and I value that in this game. Um, but at the same time, I think part of why it bumps for me is the ending, that you have another forced baptism. Even though she specifically asks you if you want to go through with it, I don't think it's clear Booker knows what he's going to do, which is, I think, the biggest aspect that's missing. If I'm giving a lot of credit to the game in the beginning with this explanation that yes, he gets baptized by the priest, but he's not accepting of it. He doesn't really understand what it means at that point. I don't know if Booker really knows what it means at the ending. I think Elizabeth does, which is why she's the protagonist. She understands that death is the only way for life to restart. But that doesn't that still play into the literal interpretation of baptism? I'm
it,
sorry. This is
it
so
might.
confusing to talk about because this game is complicated.
Well, it's like I think they're using it as a metaphor differently than how Christians use it as a metaphor, right?
We're right.
But I
But
guess
is
my
it
thing is like,
because he doesn't understand how Christians use it? Which is my personal
Possibly.
theory.
you mean Booker, the character, doesn't understand?
Or Ken Levine, the writer. So both of them, I guess. Booker
I don't
definitely
know.
doesn't understand it, I don't think, because
Right.
obviously he's not content with there being a God that forgives him. He wants to be that God. But on the other level of him, the Booker DeWitt level, he's a soldier who killed people and is regretful, but not regretful enough to do anything to change. I think what the game is ultimately saying is that there is no choice and you can't change who you are
Yes.
in a way, which it means that Elizabeth needs to kill him for the game to end on a happy note because he can't make any positive choices for himself. I think that's what they're trying to say, but I also think I got to get this out of the way. The biggest thing that annoys me in this game is if it was just two timelines for the majority of the game, I think that would be great. Where it really starts to bug me is in the section with Chen Lin, the gunsmith, when you just keep creating new universes. I think that makes it way too confusing, way too quickly. I brought up how the Daisy Fitzroy who dies isn't even the one we met at the start, and we never even go back to that original universe. That it's just always bugged me.
Yeah.
I think there's way too much going on. And the multiverse is already hard enough to understand as it is. If we were in two and at the end there was a reveal that there are infinite, I think that would justify the title in a way that would stop a lot of this conversation from having happened, just like the plot of the game.
I think there's a lot to that, especially because, I mean, it feels like there are literally just, it should just be split into I mean, I'm sure
It kind of
multiverse theory would
is.
argue with it. Yeah, that's kind of what it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange. This is so stupid. I hate to talk sometimes about what a game should be, although I love the pitch of Elizabeth as the player character.
Hey, give it up for D-Fruit. Great
I
pitch.
don't know
Let
if that
him
was my
cook.
original idea, but thank
No,
you.
Dan, it was yours.
yours.
Well, what I was gonna say was like been thinking about this since I finished the game. I think it would be maybe more powerful. I don't know, just more interesting if at the end you choose: do I get baptized and die, or do I move forward as Comstock, knowing what I know? Or maybe it wouldn't be interesting, but it's just something I was thinking about. I'm sure
That
many
is interesting.
I
That
bet
being
many
said,
people
too,
had that thought.
I really like that you're the same dang old piece of shit no matter what, though. I mean, that is such a real take, is like, hey, you can go to any universe you want, baby, but you suck in each one of them. Like, that's a cool idea. Like, I like that. And it escapes this whole, like, although it does present a problem with other characters, right?
Sure,
Like,
yeah.
yeah. Because in other instances, they're not saying that.
Yeah.
That's part of
With
why
Daisy
I wish.
Fitzroy.
Yes, true. That's part of why I wish that Booker had more character in negative ways. Like if he talked about more like being okay with killing people or
The
being
Boxer
a little
Rebellion
racist.
stuff is tough. I mean,
Is
going
it?
through that section, he sucks, and his
Mhm.
whole thing sucks, and he's trying to talk he's like rationalizing. Oh, it's a nightmare.
The
Yeah.
game really tells you how it thinks you should feel in that moment via him and Elizabeth, and it's tough to. I remember just being like, "Can I just not fight these people?" Like, but you obviously don't have that option. It was the most reluctant like trigger pulls I've had in the game, and I love
There-
shooting people.
There are only 4 choices that you get to make in this game. I bet I can name them all. The first one is whether or not to throw the ball at the couple. The second one is which pin to give Elizabeth, bird or cage. I pick bird. Anybody else?
Does anyone ever pick Cage?
Exactly.
I pick Cage.
She just got out of it. You're going to give her another one?
I don't know what it meant.
Yeah, maybe in Jeremy's mind, it's a reminder of where she's come from.
No, I totally
Usually-
picked Cage because I remember. Well, first of all, I remember reading it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter
doesn't
which
matter.
one. But I was like, I think I probably picked Bird the last one. I'm gonna pick Cage.
And then I'm probably going to get these out of order, but is one of the choices ringing the bell, or do you do that no matter what? Dan, you know?
Don't remember, but I think you do no matter what. I could be wrong.
The other one is whether or not to kill Slate. Did anybody leave him alive? Because he specifically asks to die a soldier's death. I'm wondering, did anybody leave him alive?
I did.
I cannot remember.
I left him alive. What happens if you leave
Slate.
him alive? Yeah.
Oh yeah, I did, and you find him in the prison.
Basically lobotomized, but alive. And then if you kill him, Elizabeth says, I guess that's what he wanted. So that was kind of
I
funny.
didn't kill him afterwards.
I killed him. At that point, he's barely alive. I think Booker says that too. What's the last choice? I know what it should be, but they in the list of cut content, there were so many
think you
choices
named
that
them.
they left out. But there's one that got cut that should have been in there. When you get on the Zeppelin the second time, you reach for the control. At one point, you had the option to set the destination as either New York or Paris. They should have put that in. I think it's a baffling choice not to leave it in, because the first time you fight about it, then you end up out of the Zeppelin and then you end up back in. That's when I think that choice was supposed to happen. And I think that would have been one that could solidify the character if you still put in New York after everything you went through. But I don't know.
Yeah. I like that.
Does anybody have anything else about this game that they're dying to talk about? I feel bad that as brief as this game can be, you could deep dive on every section. It would be worthy of a games club itself.
I have a question I'd like to propose to everybody that like is kind of in that line, Nick. What's everyone's favorite set piece that comes to mind with this game? For me, my initial reaction is that it is the when you meet Elizabeth and going through her tower and having the songbird first show up and you two getting like thrown into the sky and getting on the sky hook or the sky rail. For me, it's probably that, but there were so many in this game that I really was enamored by. Defru, do you have one?
I think there's a lot of good options. I'm going to go with something we haven't discussed really at all, and that's walking in the multiverse at the end. There's always a
Ah,
lighthouse,
my gosh, yeah.
and you see all the other bookers and Elizabeth walking along. That really made me go, "Oh, this is amazing. What is this?"
There's a moment there
Yeah.
too that it seems like it's leading you down one path as you're kind of following her, but it does split. And I wasn't sure because the sort of docks are building themselves as you walk towards them, a cool little effect. I went left. I bet you can go right and there's no consequence, but Nick, you're shaking your head.
I did the same thing because the right path is much shorter and it's a longer walk to go left, and neither changes the result.
Okay, gotcha.
But I tried. I walked all the way to the end of one and then all the way to the longer one just to see. Oh, I want to comment on Songbird real quick. Actually, kind of love the choice that you never fight him because he's too powerful. And there's a really cool implication if you follow the lore that he's the reason that Booker loses in every other attempt. As soon as they get into a confrontation, Booker dies, or he gets Elizabeth back, Songbird, which is why that you never actually fight him in the version where you win. I think that's really cool.
Oh, wow.
Do
I
we know
like
what
that.
who the songbird is? I didn't research to know like if there's any significance on who's in that suit or whatever.
Here's the thing, the music plagiarism is like a very obvious element. I think that the Jeremiah Fink storyline is a lot less obvious in how it's presented. And maybe I think this is expounded on in Burial at Sea, but he's basically worked with Su Chong from Rapture to make copycat versions of all of the BioShock technology.
Okay.
So you have like your own Big Daddies, you have your own plasmids, all this stuff. He's basically also plagiarized, but from Rapture.
Okay, interesting.
Oh, that I like that.
Jeremy, do you have a set piece that you like?
I'm just gonna say one we haven't talked about, which is like the nightmare place you wind up with all in the clouds that has all the people who are like, with the masks and what is that? Is that like that's like Comstock's house or something?
Is this where you meet old Elizabeth?
Yeah, it's like at the end of that whole thing, you meet old Elizabeth.
I was also confused on where this location actually is because at the end of it, you see New York on fire.
Right.
But I wasn't clear if we were still in Colombia or not. I guess we are.
Yeah, I think it's Comstock's house.
Comstock house, which is such an annoying phrase that they use over and over. Comstock house.
Yeah.
I got to go to Comstock house. Why are you saying it like that?
Comstock house, yeah.
Being apostrophe in there.
But it has that thing where you're like walking through the mist clouds and then it unfolds and you see like the big building. And it's really scary in there too. Yeah.
It is cool. It kind of looks like Arkham City.
Yeah.
Here's a cut content trivia fact that always will drive me crazy in that section. The alarm characters, they were originally called the Boys of Silence, and they were like clickers from The Last of Us, where if they heard you, they would attack you. But they changed it so that if they see you, they attack you, and they have like a spotlight on their eyes, but they clearly still have the ears like they were supposed to hear instead of see. I bet they just couldn't nail the footstep technology.
They're allowed to have ears still, you know?
They shouldn't. You got one. Eyes or ears?
Eyes or ears, pick.
To be fair, Nick has been, on this stance for a while, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously I picked ears because I'm a podcaster.
My man.
I'm trying to think of a set piece I like a lot. There was one thing I missed that I remember from old playthroughs where you can find a dead handyman and listen to the tape that he's been holding from his wife. I don't know if anybody found this, but it reveals that those characters have more humanity than they let on. I really like the quiet moments in the game in general, going to comfort Elizabeth getting drowned in a baptismal font, getting my hand stabbed, putting on that
Very
bandage.
quiet moment.
Shh, quiet.
So Nick, I know you have a friend who got the Jack from BioShock chain tattoos.
Yeah.
Do you have any friends who have gotten the branded AD on their right hand?
No, but I might do it.
Oh God.
I like the
Better
Lutessa's
Call
house.
Shepherd.
That's a cool place too. The Lutessa's house.
Yeah, that's cool.
You learn a lot there.
That's the part of that segment of the game, because that is in the ghost mom portion. But the actual exploration of those homes, I really like Albert Fink's house, where you hear everybody wants to rule the world, and it's kind of floating separated. It's really cool. Yeah, BioShock Infinite. What a
we
game.
talked about it for infinite amount of time,
and I could talk about it for longer, but
it does feel like we just scratched the surface in some ways on, like, you know, we could talk about some of these ideas forever.
Do you guys want to walk through this lighthouse with me, and we'll figure out if it takes us back to the multiverse or if we're in a new universe?
Nick, where'd that key come from?
Huh? I've always had it. I just couldn't see it until now.
The whole time, like, Elizabeth.
I killed so many people for you.
I'll do more. I'll keep killing.
That darn girl.
Yeah, they're lucky Songbird didn't destroy even more of the tower when they first tried to escape it, because he cut that thing in half.
Oh yeah, he went X Games mode on that thing.
That is an awesome sequence, the escape. It's really cool. Visually, I love running around and jumping, and I do have, although I think the last set piece is kind of annoying, it is fun to go from the skyline to one of those ships, push people off, shoot them in the face with the shotgun, and then jump back. Makes me feel like a cool guy.
But that should have been like the first zone combat. Like, it should have been like that right away, and then they, evolve it from there. Like, it should have been baseline. That's how cool it is, and then more ideas.
I agree.
I like that. I also do like the Songbird. Whatever the freaking musical note gag they do, that twist with the music notes.
It's Cage. It's not just the thing I was literally held in. It's also literally the notes that wake him up.
I'll say this: it got my ass. It straight up got my ass. I was not expecting that. I was not thinking about notes.
I wasn't either. No. Although they mentioned music quite a bit. I don't know if you noticed that. There's a lot of music in the game.
I'll have to go back.
Yeah, we should have talked about that on the podcast.
I played it on mute. Is that
really?
Is that
a difficulty setting I just don't know about?
Yeah. Mute.
Yeah, and then you plug in your RGB cables. Mm-hmm. I probably played it that way the first time. I did not get an HDMI until way too late in my 360 cycle.
I have these stupid RBG cables.
Very good.
They're a lot different.
Thank them for ruining the Supreme Court for us. No, she didn't. I'm not by herself.
She had help. The Songbird
We're all
helped.
complicit in what happened, right?
Why can the Songbird not handle being underwater if it's made from a Big Daddy? Think about it.
It's pressurized in the water. It's too low.
I guess.
Right?
Big Daddies are fine.
Yeah, but they don't actually go in the water.
They do. Down there. The Big Daddies have to. They clean the outside of the...
Oh.
Yeah.
Well...
You go out in the water, I think. In 2, you do for sure.
Okay, I never played that.
I am like Nick and also have not played 2.
Oh, guys, it's so good. Rush over to it right away.
It's the one that our boy Ken didn't write. That was my historical justification. But now I might just play it because being a Big Daddy freaking rocks. What if the Songbird was me? This is the difference. This is the difference in twists, by the way, between the first game and the second game. It's exactly the same as like the logical leap from Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back to Knights of the Old Republic. The first twist, what if the guy was your dad? Great twist. We got to beat it. Next twist, what if the guy was you?
Yeah.
And that's how Comstock's reveal always lands for me.
It's just a hard twist. It's just a hard twist. It belongs in the category of like it was all a dream or this protagonist was crazy the whole time. It's just hard to pull off and make feel satisfying.
But here's the thing. It actually kind of is those endings too, and it's literally the end of this game. You are him, I'm killing you, you're dead. Black screen.
Yeah. Right.
You're telling me there's not one Voxophone recording of him being like, shit, my name used to be Booker DeWitt.
It was also driving me crazy that like Slate is there, but he doesn't know that Comstock is Booker. Wouldn't you like recognize him or something?
I could do this all day. We shouldn't start down this train.
You're right.
I like to think they're hiding it. They all know and they're hiding it.
Yeah.
Like he hates when we bring that up.
The Lady Comstock question I posed earlier has been weighing on my mind, though. Is Lady Comstock
Anna?
also Booker's wife who died? Is it the same person or was it a different woman?
And is it your daughter?
Well, how could they live on Columbia anyway? Because like 12,000 feet up, it's really cold.
Right.
Also,
I did think of this. Yeah.
Loading technology.
Well, the Lutesses have this technology, and it makes the climate.
And not to go back to this, but Battleship Bay, there's a swinging platform with water on it. That water's going to fall off.
You can find the behind the scenes where the water is flowing through underneath. I did that.
So it falls down and then comes back?
I don't know about that part. I just know I saw it going down. Like you go into what you see it flowing underneath the part. I don't know where it goes. It's recycling. It's like a fountain.
There's a listener pulling their hair out at this point.
Yeah.
Like they were almost there.
I can't believe they didn't talk about Elizabeth for the first hour and now they're talking about the water system.
I can't believe we talked about Battleship Bay twice.
It's a good name. The name of it was originally Battleship Cove, and Bay was a huge improvement.
That's true.
The names are bad in general, though. I think Comstock kind of sucks as a name.
You know,
Andrew Ryan's good.
In Seattle,
and Columbia sucks as a name, I think, because Columbia is also the name of a place
of Shakira's home
in real life. So why call it that?
Did you hear the Shakira's hips don't lie in this game? That was my favorite part.
Yeah, I did hear that.
Yeah, it was when the Irish guys, you see them, they're like being racist to the Irish guys, and they're listening to Shakira.
Yep, my man.
Just want to talk about the one race we can talk about still. There's quite a bit of like Irish racism in this game.
They do their
not too
love
much
to see it.
Stuff.
They do their best to make like it be like, see, it's not all black people. There's other people here too, and it's like, golly. Thank you, game.
Well, this has been a wonderful episode of BioShock Games Club. I will reiterate, because we talked a lot on critiques, I love this game. Even my conflicted feelings ultimately sway positive because I value creators who make choices, who shoot beyond their wildest dreams to make something like this a reality. I would never expect the third installment of a BioShock game to be as expansive and wild as this game is, and I really do appreciate everything they tried to do. Can we get some thoughts from our panel on your lasting impression? What are you gonna be thinking about when you think about BioShock Infinite? Dan, how about you?
I think the beginning and the almost very beginning and the almost very ending. Going up to Columbia, wandering around, seeing the Beach Boys cover that I listened to on YouTube so many times when writing papers in college.
Yeah.
And then the very end when there's no more combat and you're just wandering through with Elizabeth and kind of figuring everything out, because I don't know if Booker ever does. I don't know if I ever do, but just seeing where it goes. So really just the images of the city, and it really succeeds in environmental storytelling, I think, in that way.
Yeah. Jeremy Schmidt, what will BioShock Infinite leave with you?
Yeah, I like what you both just said. I think that's true for me
Well,
too.
think of a new one.
Uh, I like.
Oh, this is these sketch guys. They're not as fast on their feet as us improvisers.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Hold on, let me write it down. I Yeah, like to me this reminds me of like a movie that took a big swing like in the 70s or something where
Yeah.
you're like, boy, it's getting complicated up in here, but ultimately you're like glad you watched it and you're glad they did it and you're glad they did all the thing even though they stepped in all these potholes along the way. It's like it's better to do that then do like a fucking thing that just like makes no choices and is about nothing. It's about the idea that friendship is good or something, like, and
Kingdom Hearts heard that.
I like all I like all the music and set design, sound design, art design, all that good stuff. Yeah. You know, uh yeah, I wish I had. I think I just blew my wad throughout this episode saying all this other stuff.
Wonderful. And Connor McCabe, leave us with your lasting impression, and then why don't you get us started in a quick round of plugs?
Sure thing. I think by wad, Jeremy means water because we were talking about so much water in this game.
From
Don't
Battleship
get me
Bay.
started. Don't get me started.
Of course. Yeah, this game, I'm so glad that I played it. And I know I said at the beginning I leave this in a neutral sort of state. But there's so much that I really did like about this game. And one thing I can really appreciate is the ambition. And I think the game is, very ambitious. And even if it doesn't land near enough of those things to leave me completely satisfied, it's a spectacle. And I think the good for me ultimately outweighs the things that I have heavy criticism of. But I'm glad I freaking played it. And so Nick, thanks for hosting this episode and giving us a chance to talk about it. It's interesting to see the ties from this game to the original BioShock. So I'm extra glad we got to. For me, round of plugs. Thank you for having me, Connor McCabe here. You can find me all over social media at Connor_McCabe, most places. You can check out my podcast, which is a part of the network here at Super NPC Radio. Call Me by Your Game is the name of my show. You can listen to it wherever you get your shows. I have someone on to hear from them about a meaningful game from a particular moment in their life. Dan, would love to have you on sometime if you're interested at all.
Sure.
I love to ask on pod in front of other people so people can't say no. So that's my strategy. And then also check me out on Twitch. I'm on twitch.tv/cons is cool 69, where I'm done playing through this game, but I'll be playing something else when this comes out. And in general, thanks for if you're listening to this on a free feed, thanks for listening to it. Share wherever you found this. If you're a Patreon supporter, thank you as well. Hope you're excited for the Hollow Knight Games Club. That's it for me.
Jeremy Schmidt, plugs.
Follow me on Twitter at Ocarina of Crime. Listen to my show, Video Games and Comedy Show, anywhere podcasts can be found. That's it.
Dan Frost. Do you have anything you'd like to plug today?
All I'd like to plug is for the listeners of this episode to ask us to do the DLC so that Connor has to play it. And I think I'll mostly agree with Nick, but we'll see if we fight over how depressing it really is, because it's depressing.
Yeah, we do have some difference, and this is on The Last of Us 2 that we can't get into here. But I will be replaying Burial at Sea, and maybe I'll replay The Last of Us.
The DLC begs the question: is Elizabeth hot? And the answer is they think yes. The answer is they absolutely do think that. And they thought that the whole time, probably.
Begs the question, can we think of anywhere besides Rapture to set a DLC? And the answer is no.
No.
How about the place you set up before? No, can't do it. How about I mentioned your band earlier. Is that anything you'd want to plug at all?
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
You don't want gamers to listen?
it's more like there's not a whole lot going on. But if you want to come this Sunday to our band practice, we're having one. Just text me for the link. I don't want everyone to show up, but if you want to hear us play for the first time together in like 3 months, we'll sound really good.
Okay.
No, that's it.
So
We're
message
the
on Patreon.
Yeah, message Nick to ask me. Yeah, we're the Regressions on Spotify. And Nick, what are your plugs?
Oh, thank you. What a good co-host. That's that Bonk Boys material. Oops. I wasn't supposed to say that. I love BioShock Infinite. I get horny for religious themes. So
I knew it.
I was scared where that was going, actually, so that's fine.
I'll fight with you about it any day. But thank you for listening. You can listen to my podcast, Reactivators. You can follow me on Twitch at Nick Costanza. Nick Costanza on most socials. I'll be here. And hey, will you guys hold me down? And I want to get a baptism real fast. Oh,
sure.
There are 3 of us. We can be the 3 Elizabeths at the end.
What is this? I am reborn as Comstock.